goals of the team and not my, but then I go watch my daughter play basketball and it's like, there she is. She looks good in green and gold. Ooh, she looks good sitting on the bench. It's like I got this little spotlight on her. Okay? And it's like no matter where she goes, oh yeah, she's, And so I've got to get that off them and get the focus on the whole team. This came from kids. This came from younger kids. I mean 9th, 10th, 11th grade kids. And even younger than that. One of the things they needed from adults was one instructional voice. Now what that taught me as a football coach was I didn't need 6 assistants yelling at everybody. They needed to have one, when there was an instruction during the game that needed to be given, one voice. And it's the same voice they've been hearing all along. Okay? Basketball, they didn't need 3 voices during a timeout. They needed one instructional voice. But you know what that means as a spectator? One instructional voice. Now, it needs to be the same voice that's given the instruction during the week. Doesn't mean you can't be an encourager. Doesn't mean you can't use your voice to encourage. But it means, as far as instruction goes, it doesn't work. And if it does work, if it works to stand on the sidelines and holler advice at kids during the games, if it works to do that, why don't we do it everywhere? Why don't we do that everywhere? Stand on the sidelines and holler advice, technical advice. Next time your kid has a math test, show up. Now, you show up and you walk in the room. Just the fact that you're there in math, is that going to help them? Here it's test day. And they look up and you're there. Is that going to help their performance? Just the fact you're there? Probably it's going to throw them off a little bit. How about if you did this? How about if you stood there and you're trying to be encouraging and so you're doing stuff like this. How about, hurry up! Yeah, that'll help. Yeah, that really helps. How about if you're offering technical advice? You got the test in front of them, it's a math test, and you know a lot about math, and so you're thinking, okay, factor the binomial pair, use the quadratic equation, Even if it's the right advice, they probably had all the preparation they needed from the person who's doing the instruction all week long. How about if you're offering advice that's different than what the teacher has been giving them for 3 weeks, or wrong? Cancel out all the X's. What? Has nothing to do with what I'm doing. So what kids say is one instructional voice, and that needs to be the voice of the coach. So as far as offering advice, allow the coach to do that. And you can be as much of an encourager and as much of a supporter and probably even a better confidence builder by simply just providing enthusiasm. Here's the last thing that kids say. And this is probably not so much from kids as from another source that I had. It is, there are 4 roles in any athletic contest. 4 roles. Spectator, coach, official, and participant. 4 roles. Choose one. Choose one role. Okay? I tell the same thing to my assistant coaches. 4 roles in any athletic contest. Don't officiate. Don't watch. You're too old to play. Coach. That's what there is. Your role is to coach. Coach. Okay? I said the same to my players. 4 roles. Choose one. Don't officiate. Don't coach. Don't watch. Play. But the same thing's true for parents and other spectators. Choose one role. If you want to coach, apply for the job. If you want to officiate, they always need help. If you want to play, find some 50 and over league. No, that's me, not you. All right. And you know what kids say? If you can do those things during the game, your being there is really critical to kids. They love having you there. They love having you at the game. But I've had an awful lot of kids who've come to me over these issues and in some ways even asking for my help. And what they say is basically this: I like having my dad and mom there, but if they can't do those things, if they can't model poisoning, if they can't model correct behavior, that may not be their exact words, but if they can't do those things, I'd rather have them stay home. Now that hits you right in the heart, that they'd rather have you stay home than be there. And really, everything on those lists that the kids are asking for are choices. They're just choices you can make when you go in. Now this last one is going to be a little bit, remember I said I'm very direct, and this came from kids. So I want you to think about this as we go through this one. One of the questions that I ask kids when they leave program, junior high to high school to college, college on to life, I ask them another whole series of questions. And 2 of the questions I ask are, what's been the most enjoyable part of this whole experience? What's been the least enjoyable part of this whole experience? Now I started asking those questions because I wanted to know what's the least enjoyable part of this whole experience. I want to know, is there something that I did that was a bad memory for a kid? Is there something that I did in practice or something is there something about my way I coach that I need to change? So it was more of a style check for me more than anything else. Well, the more I started listening to what kids were saying, the more I thought, oh my gosh, that was me as a dad. That was me as a dad. Because what kids have told me what they need after the game is time and space. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. It changed the way I did my post games. They don't want to stand there for 30 or 35 minutes talking about inbounds plays. Not even college kids. I got the next day I could do all that. My post games went to about 5 to 7 minutes of quick, positive, uplifting stuff. Boom, get them out of there. Because what kids said they needed was time and space. Leave me alone. Allow me to recover. Now, so when I ask kids, what's the least favorable part of this whole experience? I kept getting one answer all the time. And I don't care if it was eighth grade boys or whether it was college women or college men. When I say, look back over your whole experience, the whole time you've been playing basketball up here for the last 16 years, what's your least favorable part of the whole experience? And the most common answer I've gotten, and especially in the last 8 years, it's been equal number of both genders, equal number of women as men, is quote unquote, in the car with dad after the game. Now what in the heck happens? So they started saying that, and then it came back the next year, and it came back the next year. That same response kept coming back. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing in the car with my kids? And so I ask kids, what goes on in the car that you don't like? What's that bad memory? Here's what it is. They don't want to rehash the game. They don't want to relive it. They don't want to talk about every missed free throw. They don't want to talk about every strategy. Why is coach playing his zone? They don't want to talk about the other kids. They don't want to talk about the other team. Because what they need is time and space. Leave them alone. The more competitive the kid and the more competitive the sport, the more time and space they require to recover. I always say wrestlers need about a week. They need a lot of space. I can remember playing high school football myself and being, you're not very mature in that age, 17, 18 years old, but I can remember playing a Friday night game, and about Sunday afternoon you start realizing you've got a family out there. It takes you about that long to start saying, you know what, I got brothers and sisters and we're going to eat and things are kind of back to normal. It takes you that long to recover from an emotional game like that. So really listening to kids, it changed the way that I parented more than even the way I coached after the games. Time and space, quiet understanding, reflective listening. Be the one that sees the big picture, gets them back to why they played in the first place, which has something to do with fun. I'm saying to my daughter, gets in the car with me, and I say something like this. How come Mary gets all the shots? And what I'm trying to say is, hey, we got this connection here with basketball, let's talk about it. Or maybe I'm saying, hey, I think you're a good shooter. Maybe that comment is, hey, I think you're a good shooter too. But how come Mary gets all the shots? And what that comes across as is this, a knife in the back in the relationship of teammates. I sit down with her in the car and we're going home and I'm saying, boy, you guys are doing great till you started playing that zone. And I'm thinking, hey, this is basketball talk here. We got a connection here. And she's thinking, a knife in the back in the relationship of the authority figure, the coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. So I've got to be really careful with what I say. I encourage you to only talk to your son or daughter if there's been some behavior exhibited on the court or on the field that you would not accept in your home. Disrespect of authority, profanity, something you would not allow in your home, talk to them about it. And even then, give that some time. Even then, give that some time. And then when you do talk to them about it, talk to them about it from parent to child, not parent to athlete. I was talking to college kids and I said, what are the good things that happened? I started talking about some of the good things that happened. And they said, this one girl says, I love having my grandparents come to the game. I said, why? They love you no matter what. No matter what happens, they love you. And she said, this one girl said, my grandma, no matter what would happen, would always come up to me after the game and say, I love watching you play. Now, if you need to say something to your son or daughter, there's a great thing to say, because it is the truth and it sums it up. I love watching you play. That's why you're there in the first place. I love watching you play. When I talked to an audience of college kids back in Kansas not long ago, and I was actually talking to coaches and parents, And a young lady came up to me who was about 30 years old, and she was 6'1", and she was a Division I basketball player and an alternate to the Olympic team. Very, very good player. And she came to me and she said, you know, Coach, I had never thought about that in the car thing until you said that. And she said, when you said that, that just hit a trigger that told me why I chose to go 1,200 miles away from home to go to college. She said, I could have stayed right where I was and gone to college. I had scholarship offers all over where I was. And I chose to go across the country to go to college because I was sick of getting in the car and rehashing the game. And it was like, oh my gosh, that was the whole reason. I coached at a 4A level, and I had a young man who played for me. And he started in 3 varsity sports at a 4A level, which is unheard of. He was all league in 2 of the 3. Okay? This kid was a typical high school, really, really good athlete. I walked into a locker room one time after a basketball game his senior year with 5 months to go before he graduated. And I walked into the locker room, and it was like an hour and a half after the game. I had written next day's practice plan. I'd called all the scores in. I'd swept. I'd done all the stuff that you do after a game. And I'm walking by the team room. I look in, and here he is. And so I look over, and I love him. I love this kid, so I'm going to tease him a little bit. So I said, what, no social life? And I look at him, and all of a sudden I realize he's not in the mood to be teased. So I sat down next to him. About a half hour later, here's what came out. This is from a kid who's 3-sport starter and all league in 2 of the 3. Coach, I don't go home till my dad's asleep. I don't go home till my dad's asleep. The kid's 18 years old. I said, why? He said, I don't want to talk about every missed free throw. I don't want to talk about referees' calls. I don't want to talk about why that team is taller than we are. He said, I don't want to talk about the games anymore. He said, so I just wait for my dad to be asleep, then I go home. And I thought to myself, how fortunate is that father that kid was choosing to stay with me, or at least by himself, rather than going out and making bad decisions with alcohol or with some friends who were making other bad decisions. How fortunate is that dad that kid is deciding in order to stay away from him, he's going to stay somewhere that's at least a good decision there. So think about that one. That one really affected me. Everywhere I go, I ask people, if you come up with better ways to do this, get back to me, because I talk to people all around the country, and really what I'm trying to do is help kids. And so if you have a better way to spread this message. So I got this phone call from this guy, actually from Eastern Washington. And he called me and he said, it was a principal. And he said, after you came and spoke here, he said, we sat down and we talked about it, because he said, we have a huge problem in our conference, not just at our school, but our entire conference, with behavior of parents. And he said it started with one school where they got real unruly and started getting all of the officials. And then when you go play that school, it's like, well, if they're doing it, we need to do it to balance the scales. And so he said that and pretty soon we have 11 schools doing the same thing. And he says, we got a parent problem. We have a behavior problem with adults at our games that's just enormous. So he said, here's what we did. He said, we took 3 kids from our leadership class, and we sat them down in front of the adult section. And I said, okay. And he said, they sat there with a yellow card and a red card like soccer. I said, hold it. You got more guts than I got. I said, there's no way. He said, you don't understand the depth of this problem. He said, this was a problem. I said, okay, what's the yellow card say? He said, the yellow card says, please model poise and confidence. Our athletes need that from you. Whew. He said, we used your exact words. I said, what's the red card say? He says, red card says, your behavior is inappropriate, please leave. And I went, ooh, man. I said, I don't think I could do that. He said, we needed to. I said, how many times did you use that red card? He said, once. He said, kid went up and handed the red card to a guy, and he left. And he said, but now every time those kids stand up to kind of look around to see where the problem is, every adult goes, nice call, ref. Good job, coach. Well done. He said, we made the change. It may have been made through fear, but we made the change. Okay? And he said, what happened is, how humbling was it for a 17-year-old kid to go up with a yellow card to an adult that says, please model poise and confidence, or in other words, please grow up. How humbling is that to have a 17-year-old kid walk up to you and say, please grow up? He said this to me when I was talking about, boy, that's pretty dramatic, or that's pretty drastic. He said, our problem is really extreme. But he said, when adults behave like children, children do not learn how to become adults. That was his quote to me. When adults behave like children, children do not learn how to become adults. And he said, we had to take some strong measures to try to make this change. In order to help their performance, accept their reasons for playing, accept their expectations, drop ours, accept theirs, what their goals are. Understand why they play. Release them to the coach, release them to the team, have it become their experience. Okay? Have it become their experience. Model poise and confidence during the game. One instructional voice. After the game, give them time and space. You know what will happen if you give them time and space? They'll come talk to you. They'll come to you to talk. And that makes it so much better. Because they'll talk about things they need to talk about and not things you need to talk about. So give them time and space. That's the best thing you can do for your kids. Being an athlete lasts such a short time. Think back to your own athletic experience. It's done like that. And all of us wish we could go back and relive some of it. Our athletic experience just is done so fast, and it's just like one day it's over. And all kids are saying to you through me is, be part of their good memories. Do the things that they need to help them perform well, and to be part of their good memories. If they're making good decisions about drugs and about alcohol, about academics and about friends, sports are just dessert. Nothing else. They're just dessert. And if they're not making good decisions about those things, there's no amount of athletic success. There's no number of state championships that'll make up for bad decisions about alcohol or academics or friends. None. So see it for what it is and be the one that sees the big picture. Do your part. Be part of their good memories. On the back of, on this card, I'm going to leave you a business card if you'd like to take one. And I did this at the recommendation of a former player of mine who I love to death, he's a retired Microsoft guy at like 36. So now like follows me around and sits in the back of the room and critiques me, you know. Coach, he's talking too fast. I know, Mark. So he goes, leave him your business card. He said, because a lot of people will want to ask you questions, but they would not ask in public, that they'll ask you over email. A lot of people in a public forum, a public setting will not ask questions, but on email they'll ask you all kinds of questions. Well, I spoke at Hoquiam not long ago, and when I got back, it was an hour-and-a-half drive, I had 11 emails. I was at Arlington a month or so ago, I got back, I had like 9. So I was like, okay, it is very true. And he said, then do this, Coach, on the back. He said, summarize your game reminders. So he said, because he has 3 daughters of his own. He says, because like when I'm watching the game and I'm getting all caught up in it, I'm going, and I go, hold it. Coach Brown says, model confidence and poise. I can do that. So on the back of these cards are game reminders. If they're helpful to you, to kind of keep perspective, that'd be great. There may be somebody else in your life that maybe needs them and that you might want to hand these to. There may be some people who are not here who you may want to think, you know what, this might be helpful for their son or daughter to have it. So feel free to take them and pass them to anybody who you think who their kids might benefit. Okay? I want to thank you very much for your attendance here on a nice rainy night in Seattle, and I'd like to thank you very much for being here and representing your sons and daughters the way that you have. Thank you very much.